I'm Lynda Dossey. I'm an architect, and today we'll be taking an architectural walking tour of the Loop in downtown Chicago. In the early 1880s and through 1900, during the first economic boom of Chicago, all the train lines were built in the Loop to sort of demarcate the downtown area. We're standing in front of the Monadnock Building. It was completed in 1891, and it is the last, possibly, but definitely the tallest, fully masonry load-bearing high-rise. It caps out at 291 feet and pretty much met the limit that you could go for height for a true load-bearing structure. You can track how the loads are translated vertically by looking at the windows at the top, where the depth of the thickness of the wall is only 18 inches. But by the time we come down to the base level, the walls are 6 feet thick, and they actually get thicker below grade, working their way to a raft foundation that's sitting on Chicago's marshy soil. At the entrance, they used granite to sort of demarcate where you go in and carve the name onto the building. But all the rest of it is brick, layered upon layer upon layer upon layer. And it gives this sort of sculptural quality as though the whole building has been carved from clay just because of the uniformity of the material. The majority of the buildings at the time were highly articulated. The original design of this building was intended to face over the brick with the highly ornate Egyptian motif. However, other people in the firm and the owner decided to leave it as is, showing the raw form and the raw materiality of the building. So the oriel bays and also the tripart window, where you have the central window with the two flanking windows, is a very typical style for the first Chicago school here in Chicago that began with the first round of skyscrapers in the 1880s to the 1900s. We're in front of the Inland Steel Building. It's the first building that was built in the Loop in over 20 years, and it was completed in 1958. It's the headquarters of the Inland Steel Manufacturing Company and steel provider. They wished the building to express all the many products and services that they offered. So as a consequence, they made the decision to use brushed stainless steel over their entire facade with glass. It marks an extreme departure from the majority of buildings that had been built in the Loop to that time. Up until this point, most of the high-rises here in the Loop were all masonry or terracotta clad or stone clad on top of a steel frame construction. In this building, you can see the steel on the exterior of the building, and it's clad solely in glass. There's no motifs, there's no ornament. It's just stripped down raw materials as minimally as possible. The stripped down minimalist, pure brute form is kind of what defines the second Chicago school. It espoused upon many of the ideas that Mies van der Rohe had been sprinkling around Chicago in some of his own works. The columns were all articulated along the edge of the floor plate, and long span beams were installed between the columns, which means there are no interior columns, and it is one big floor plate of nothing to lay out for office space. The express structure on the outside of the building as the aesthetic ended up being kind of a defining moment of the American skyscraper moving forward after World War II. We're across the river from Marina City, one of Chicago's cities within the city. Marina City was the first post-World War II complex. It houses retail, a marina, an office building, a movie theater, and a skating rink when built, but it was capped off by these amazing residential towers that are just striking. When completed, the towers were the tallest residential tower in the world, but also the tallest reinforced concrete building in the world. If you were to compare and contrast this building to the other buildings in the area, in the 1960s was an exploration of concrete in the Béton brute form as a high-rise here. This is kind of pushing past the original Béton brute aesthetic into something more elegant. And unlike the other systems of where you're framing with steel, which has to be square, concrete allows you great fluidity of form. That's clearly evident when you look at the structural ribs and cantilevering that's happening. You can see the beams coming up off of the columns, springing and curving around, creating the actual structure that keeps the cantilever spanning. The uses of the buildings have evolved now so that the office building is now a hotel. The movie theater is now a performing arts venue. And the skating rink is gone and replaced by a restaurant. but the marina is still active, and the housing towers are still some of the most amazing views and apartments in the city. So the building behind me, mostly above me, is the Willis Tower, although most locals will refer to it as the Sears Tower because it was built by the Sears Roebuck Company as their headquarters. They had to buy 15 different buildings and pay the city $2.7 million to close and decommission a street so they could put together 2 whole city blocks. During the process, they discovered that the bundle tube system is the most efficient way to build tall. You have one square in the center that's sort of being braced by all the surrounding squares. So as you look at this building, there's one square that will continue up to the very top of the building. And as the other ones come on, it starts to self-buttress itself all the way down. And the floor plates get smaller and smaller. There is a local story that they bundled together 9 cigars in the office one night and pulled them up to the heights that they wanted. And that's how they determined the final design of the top of the building. For 25 years, this was the tallest building in the world. And it is still the tallest building in Chicago. For tourists, you can go up to the observatory floors, where they've added recently a new feature called the ledge. If you look closely at the very top of the building, you sort of see these glass boxes protruding out of the facade, and you can look through a glass floor all the way down. We're standing in front of the Thompson Center, formerly the State of Illinois building. It was built by Helmut Jahn and completed in 1984. He won a design competition, and his competition was, let's just say, less conventional than the others that were submitted. The building relies on an extruded donut plan taking up the whole site, but then it carves away the whole southeastern facade, opening up to the government buildings that are catty-corner opposite the street. And it also allows pedestrians on the outside to be able to look in and see their government at work. The whole concept was this idea of transparency in government. The color scheme is one of those things that is frequently debated among Chicagoans, but the general idea was it was red, white, and blue. As part of that carve on the southeast corner, the facade also tilts its way back, which actually allows more light into the atrium, but it also allows a relief to the city blocks around us. All of these buildings are very square and tall, and they just kind of compress you in. So by carving the building back, you're creating a relief for everyone on the plaza. The glass is a mix of many different types of glass. So some of it's reflective, some of it is clear, some of it is spandrel glass, which is back painted, some of it is metal panel that's glazed in to give the pattern across the surface. The building also ties into the CTA Clark station, which is one of the busiest CTA stations in town, as all the train lines in the loop come to it, including the blue line that runs out to O'Hare. This is the point of departure into the downtown area. If you walk up to the building, you can get a glimpse into the atrium, and you can see all the exposed structure that's holding up the atrium glazing, and also all the different balconies and interconnecting stairs between the levels inside the atrium. So it's a very super tech kind of building. All the structure is exposed and revealed, and it's telling you the story of how the building is put together. We're standing in front of Aqua Tower, completed in 2009 by Studio Gang Architects, headed by the design efforts of Jeannie Gang. It is world famous and well known for its undulating facade. The facade is not random. The idea was to stretch out the balconies as far as you could, to look around all the forest of other high-rises around here to seek a better view for something else in the city. The other benefit of all those towers is it breaks up the facade, which also breaks up the reflections on the glass, actually making this high-rise bird-friendly, to the point that PETA awarded it its Proggy Award also in 2009. The building was not performed in any sort of three-dimensional CAD. The curves were mostly followed along by hand on trace paper, similar to how one might do animation. Right now we're in front of 150 North Riverside, completed in 2017 by Getch Partners, and Magnus and Klemensic as the structural engineers. This building is rather remarkable in the sense that it's on a lot that nobody wanted because they thought it was too hard to build on. 25% of the lot is allowed to be built on. That's the only part of the building that touches the ground and actually goes down into foundations. A part of that is a consequence of the fact of the riverfront setback requirement by the city that's occurring on this side that sets the building back 75 feet from the river's edge. On the other side were the Amtrak train lines that prevented any structure coming through down below and limited what could be built up above. From level 8 down to level 4 are cantilevering columns that are bracketing the floor plates back to the core and holding the whole system up. For this reason, a lot of us locals refer to it alternately as the guillotine and the tuning fork and the champagne flute, because we are fond of nicknaming our buildings here. But it's an amazing feat of engineering, and this building has already won countless awards for both design and engineering.
Hey guys, are you here to check this crib out? Start over. Hey guys, I was expecting you. Come on into my crib. Welcome. This is the dining room where we break bread, we eat. Got a lot of great memories here at this table. Also, that little boat right there was a piece of art I got in Venice. I had gotten into boating here in Chicago on Lake Michigan, so I got attached to boats, so I bought that piece of art. I've actually had this house since 2004, but now I'm in LA. It's kind of a vacation house now. Keep a few of my trophies still here. This is not all of them, but as you can see, I got replicas of the 6 NBA championship titles, All-Star MVP trophy in there, SB award. Got a couple SB awards actually, and my kids got a few things in there as well. So it's kind of turned out to be a little family trophy case. This is kind of the family room. Sit here, watch a lot of the NBA games, NFL games, Sunday. Yeah, this is kind of a hangout room. Between here and in the kitchen, this is the coolest place in the house, you know, it's the kitchen. I like hanging out in here. I like cooking. You gotta eat, so hey, what's a better place to be than in the kitchen? But I like sitting here in the morning. I get on my computer and just able to watch the sun rise. But the greatest thing about being in Chicago in the summertime is having an opportunity to enjoy the great weather that is kicked off from a rough winter. So I enjoy coming to Chicago. It's a lot of fun, hanging out by the pool. Got my nice Weber over there. You know, I'm a Southern guy from Arkansas, so I like throwing some steaks and things on the grill. Got my little greenery up here. I like chipping balls out in the backyard. I play with some pretty good golfers. If you're wondering if I play with Michael, yes, I play with him. He's a pretty good golfer.
Have you ever beat him?
No, I haven't beat him. His stakes are a little too high for me. So yeah, nice big pool. I think it's like 10 feet deep. A lot of fun. We got a nice water slide there. The kids enjoy that. So I love to have family and friends over. We're hanging out in the hot tub, barbecuing, and we love watching this TV. This Samsung Terrace TV is awesome. It is completely built for the outdoors, so it's weather resistant, very bright. This is the most special thing out here when you're outside, being able to enjoy some NBA. This is the great room. I don't spend too much time. Maybe if, you know, someone come over for a meeting, my financial guy or something like that, we kind of hang out in here. But to me, this is a wasted room. My kids at one time was into playing the piano, but they kind of outgrew that and got into basketball, which is why you should follow me. Let's go check out the basement. Got a lot of fun rooms here. Let me show you guys how much fun we have here in the cold. Let's go. Right here, we got the wine cellar, came with the house. We got a little dining room table where we can break that wine out right here and, you know, get into a couple bottles and check it out. And then after we get done with that wine, we can ease down the hallway here. And we got the movie theater. Seats 8, nice theater. Kids play video games in here a lot, but I like watching games. You know, maybe we can watch The Last Dance. Hey, maybe, you know. My favorite film, I'm an old school guy. My favorite all time is Die Hard. I'm a big fan of Bruce Willis, so I still think that that was one of the best movies of all time. And this is kind of a little workout room. Got a little weight stack over here, but it's small, but it's mostly just for cardio when you're locked up during the winter months. A little massage table here to make yourself feel good. As far as coming in here and working out, I try to continue to get in the gym 3-4 times a week, mostly in the winter months. And in the summer, I like taking it easy and playing golf. But I'm gonna take you guys to the fun side of the basement over here. So come this way. This room right here is kind of a junky room. My kids keep all their toys in here. Drum set, my little daughter got a stove. So I stay out of this here room, to be honest. This is the fun room for me because I like relaxing and taking it easy. So this bathroom gives you all that because of this. I love taking a sauna, letting it all burn out, jump in the steam shower here, you know, just detox pretty much. And again, this is my favorite place in the house. This right here is a fun area for my kids. A lot of their friends come over and hang out. They're sleeping everywhere, playing video games on that TV. Got a little fireplace here to burn some logs during the winter. Right here, we got the air hockey game. This is very competitive here. My kids are better than me. They got better reflex, obviously. But right here is my favorite video game of all time, Miss Pac-Man. Grew up as a kid playing Pac-Man, so I'm not really caught up to today's modern technology of playing, you know, Xbox and.
What's your high score on Pac-Man?
Probably close to 200,000. Yeah, I'm one of those kind of guys. This is kind of where we get it done at. Right here, as you guys know, basketball has been my life, and my kids sort of followed my dream of wanting to be a professional basketball player one day. So this was an addition that we added on to the house, and they're always in here hooping, playing 1, 2 in the morning. So I felt like this was a great investment. That's the office there, but it's kind of junky. We ain't gonna get into that. But we'll go upstairs and check out the bedrooms. This is another piece of art here. This is my baby. I used to keep this piece sitting at the front door. So every time I brought somebody over, they got intimidated when they saw this. They thought it was real. Over the years, my kids picked at him, picked his eyes out, picked his paws off. So I retired him up here now. So he kind of watches the backyard for me. Actually, it was a guy in New Orleans making this. He actually passed away, so it's a famous piece of art. Needs to be fluffed up a little bit. It's kind of aged, but it's still a good piece. This is my son's bedroom. He's off to college, Vanderbilt. He hasn't stayed here in a while. He's a D Rose fan. It's all good. Hey, he's a daddy fan too. This is my little girl Sophia's room. Yeah, just pretty pink room for a little girl. Just kept it simple. This is the laundry room. We're not gonna go in there. This is my boys' room here. We'll check this here room out. Actually, 2 of my boys stay in this here room, so just got a couple little beds in here. But as you can see by the little mirrors on the wall, they're a basketball fan. Primary bedroom. Up here, it's pretty simple, not too much in it. I mostly spend my time downstairs. I just pretty much just sleep here. Just a bathroom. And so, what I love about this house is that it has 2 primary bedrooms. There's one upstairs that is near my kids, but this one downstairs is super awesome. Come on in. This room is dirty, man. We can stand over here and video it. Primary bedroom. I get to get a nice sneak peek of my kids when they're out here playing basketball. A lot of times they don't even know when I'm watching them. I don't coach them. I may tap at the window and let them know I'm watching. Yes, that's pretty much it. Got some bad news. I got some friends coming over. We're about to fire up the grill. We're about to jump in the pool. We're gonna fire the TV up. So hey, you gotta go. Thanks for coming.
Hi, I'm Lynda Dossey. I'm an architect, and today we are taking an architectural walking tour through Chicago's downtown River North neighborhood. Prior to the completion of the Bascule Bridge in 1920, the north side of the river was primarily wharves and residential and very low-slung structures. One of the first people to take advantage of this was the Wrigley Building. The Wrigley Building itself sits on a very irregular shaped site, and therefore the building itself has a unique shape as it rises. The organization of the building is such that local ordinance capped all the buildings at about 260 feet with a provision to have an unoccupied tower above it to go up another 200 feet. So what we're seeing behind me is a building that's at 240 feet tall, and the tower goes up to 429 feet. The design itself by Graham, Anderson, Probst, and White. It was based on the cathedral in Sevilla with its clock tower, but it's also layered with motifs from the French Renaissance. The building was also cloaked in white terracotta in 6 different shades of white. So at the base, it's a little less white, and it gets more and more gleaming white as you get to the top of the building to actually increase the overall height of the building visually. So several years later, as a consequence of a Chicago statute, a banking tenant who had offices at the same level in both towers was required to connect them so that they had to be all on the same level. And thus the bridge was added some years after the building opened. It's done in polished aluminum, and it gives this amazing, remarkable sheen to it. A few years after the completion of this building, construction began on the Tribune Tower directly opposite of Michigan Avenue. The story of the Tribune Tower actually starts with a design competition that was launched in 1922, an international world design competition. Unheard of at the time, but pretty normal these days. It solicited over 260 entries from 23 different countries, and it was a kind of bellwether test artistically for prevailing architectural styles at the time. The design was eventually awarded to Howells and Hood, who created this neo-Gothic fantasy in front of us that is trying to merge the idea of a neo-Gothic church with a skyscraper. More intriguing for this building, though, is the fact that over the duration of Chicago Tribune up to that time, all of its journalists were traveling around the world and bringing back relics and fragments from all their different journeys. When this tower was built, all of those fragments have been incorporated into the base of the building. So as you walk around the building, you can see fragments of other remarkable places, like the pyramids, Notre Dame Cathedral, Westminster Abbey, so on and so forth from around the globe. That tradition is carried on, and there are some new, more recent fragments that have been added, like a fragment of brick from the Berlin Wall, a fragment from the World Trade Center, even a fragment from the old Comiskey Park baseball stadium that was torn down. So even though Howells and Hood won the competition, some of the more forward-looking designs that lost became influential in skyscrapers all across America. You can see the samples of them in Cleveland, Cincinnati, all across the country. So in many ways, it was the losing entries that were more influential than the final victor. We're standing in front of 875 North Michigan Avenue on the Mag Mile. This building is known to most locals as the John Hancock. It is the handiwork of Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, specifically Bruce Graham and Fazlur Khan, who is a structural engineer, merging their efforts together to create a seamless expression of form and structure as the chief aesthetic of the building. The building itself is acting as a giant cantilever, much like a flagpole would out of the ground. Because it's so super tall, they had to come up with a way for it to resist all the lateral forces. The cross bracing is what actually stiffens all the columns together and creates it as a structural tube. It tapers as it goes down to the base to also resist the overturning moments of the lateral forces. When it first opened, people didn't think they were going to be able to rent the units that had the cross bracing in them, but it turned out to be quite the opposite. People were so excited to say that they lived in a unit with the cross bracing that they actually flipped what the rents were. So they ended up being the more expensive ones were the ones that had the piece of structure in them. So during the mid to late 70s, there were a lot of these super tall buildings that were going up. You will see a lot of the express trussing, a lot of the express structure, just because it was a requirement to actually go that tall. And so it all gets expressed on the outside and becomes the aesthetic. So we were merging together architecture and structure in a moment, but it's actually one big moment diagram of the forces. We're standing in the park in front of the world-famous Chicago Water Tower. It's completed in 1869 by W.W. Boynton, who was one of the early Chicago architects when the city was getting rolling. He also, in addition to this building, did some of the early train stations in City Hall. We've lost all those now, but we still have the water tower. The water tower was intended to hide a 138-foot tall standpipe, which serves as a surge buffer for the water coming in off of the lake being pumped through the city. The pumping station, done at the same time in the same style, is just across the street of Michigan Avenue. Part of the features that are a little bit of a play on a classic Gothic castle. You can see the castellation, you can see added turrets, but they're hyper extended. Pointed gables, which are a very Gothic feature. Over on the pump house, you can see the sort of leaded diagonal glass that you see in medieval buildings and medieval castles. So it was very much a stylistic choice, and it was very much a flight of fancy to make these civic buildings as delightful as possible. Because it was limestone, it is one of the few buildings that actually survived the 1871 fire. When this was initially built, it was north of the city proper, and it was actually kind of out in a field. And then as the city grew and developed, it grew closer and closer. But then when the fire hit and everything wiped out, this is one of the few things remaining standing with just tragedy around it. A great irony during the fire, though, is even though the limestone of these buildings survived, the roof of the pumping house was wood. So it actually burned, crashed in, and took out all the pumps, which rendered it unable to help any further during the fire. We're standing in front of the Nickerson Mansion, also known as the Drury House Museum. The original Nickerson home was burned in the fire of 1871, so they came back and hired a firm to give them what they considered a fireproof new home. As such, it also became known as the Marble Palace. When completed, it was at a cost of $450,000 in 1883 money. It was the largest residence in Chicago. The building itself is completely clad in marble. This building represents what the standard fabric of the River North neighborhood was up until the time of the bridges being completed and the real estate moving to the north and expanding the city. Now it's overshrouded by all of its surrounding neighbors, but it serves as a nice reminder of what the original historical fabric was. Although the form and massing is effectively a Queen Anne style, it's a melange of styles. So at the base, you can see the heavy rustication, which is a nod to the Richardsonian architecture. You have the turret style that sort of emanates from the Queen Anne bay window style. You've got neoclassicism at the entrance with the double Corinthian columns. Those columns echo up, and then you have some really strong dentition around the base of the cornice. As a consequence of it trying to make it a fireproof building, a lot of the details were simplified, and the stone was cut in a way that would resist fracturing or breaking off. So the Nickersons sold the mansion in 1900 to another prominent family in Chicago, the Fisher family, that actually developed some of the old skyscrapers. In 1919, a group of Chicago citizens got together, bought the building collectively, and gave it as a gift to the American College of Surgeons, who owned the building until 2003. In 2003, they sold it to a philanthropist, Richard Driehaus, who then lovingly restored it over 5 years and created the Drury House Museum, which is now open to the public. Those tenants were also very careful stewards of the building. So as a consequence, all of the interiors are pretty much intact from when the building was sold to the citizens in 1919. Behind me across the river is the Merchandise Mart. It was commissioned by Marshall Fields and was executed and designed by Graham Anderson, Probst, and White. It was begun in the 1930s and it continued on through the Depression. The goal of the building was to merge typologies together: warehousing, commerce, and a department store with the expression of a high-rise. The results are a very big building that was the largest office building and largest building in the world when finished. The lower floors are the department store feel with large storefronts selling house goods, and the upper floors were a variety of textiles, fabrics, carpets, wall coverings that are still being sold today to the trade. Additionally, the building housed TV studios, radio stations, and a variety of other office buildings. The details of the building are a little bit sparse because of the mashup and the bulk of the warehousing, as it combined 3 different warehouses together in one space for Marshall Fields. So to try and delineate the broadness of the building, there's a heavy articulation and rhythm of the windows. The edges are chamfered. and the center tower tries to draw your eyes up and make it seem less big than it is. The surface is clad in terracotta, and there's little medallions with the logo of the Merchandise Mart set all across the building, especially at the ground level, where it's actually carved into the stone.